The moment Thomas Berkeley saw her name on the appointment confirmation, his hands went numb. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Linda's Stories. If hope brought you here today, like this video. If you believe stories can heal, comment. I'm with Linda. Let's begin. San Francisco's financial district gleamed under the October morning sun, glass towers reflecting clouds that promised rain by afternoon. Thomas stood outside the medical building on Montgomery Street, his Tom Ford suit suddenly feeling too tight around his chest. 8 years since he'd walked away from Emily Chen, choosing a partnership at Berkeley Investments over the relationship that had made him believe in second chances. His father's ultimatum had been clear: choose the firm or choose her. You can't build an empire distracted by love. He'd chosen the empire, and now he was worth $43 million, had a penthouse overlooking the bay, drove a Bentley Continental GT, and felt emptier than he'd ever imagined possible. The elevator ride to the 9th floor felt eternal. His annual executive physical had been scheduled for months. When his assistant mentioned the new physician taking over Dr. Morrison's practice, Thomas hadn't paid attention to the name. Why would he? San Francisco had thousands of doctors. The waiting room smelled of lavender and new carpet. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the Bay Bridge, sailboats cutting white trails through blue water. Thomas checked his Patek Philippe watch, 10:15, right on time. A receptionist with bright red lipstick smiled at him. Mr. Berkeley, Dr. Chen will see you shortly. Please fill out these forms. Dr. Chen. The name hadn't registered until this moment. His pen froze over the medical history form. It couldn't be her. Emily had been in medical school at Stanford when they dated, but she'd talked about specializing in emergency medicine, maybe cardiology, not internal medicine in a private practice. Not here, in the same building where his investment firm occupied 3 floors below. Mr. Berkeley? A nurse with kind eyes appeared. Follow me, please. The hallway was painted in calming blues and grays, abstract art breaking up the monotony. They passed examination rooms, each door marked with a number. Room 7. The nurse gestured inside. Dr. Chen will be with you shortly. Please change into the gown opening in the back. Thomas sat on the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath him. The room was standard clinical, nothing personal, just the usual equipment and anatomical charts. Through the door, he heard voices in the hall, a woman's laugh, professional and warm. His heart recognized it before his mind did. The door opened. Emily Chen stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, white coat crisp over burgundy scrubs. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, silver stethoscope around her neck. She was exactly as he remembered and completely transformed. At 35, she'd grown into herself, the uncertain medical student replaced by a woman who commanded her space with quiet confidence. Her dark eyes met his without a flicker of surprise. Thomas, not a question, a statement, perfectly controlled. Emily, his voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. I didn't know you were the new doctor. Clearly? She stepped inside, closing the door with a soft click. Dr. Morrison retired last month. I took over his practice. Her tone was professional, detached. I see you're here for your annual executive physical. Any new medical concerns since your last checkup? This was surreal. 8 years vanished, and she was asking about his cholesterol levels. Thomas forced himself to breathe normally. No, nothing new. Same as usual. Emily tapped notes on her tablet, not looking at him. Blood pressure has been trending slightly elevated according to your records. Are you managing stress effectively? Stress? Right. If she only knew. Thomas ran a hand through his hair. The dark blonde strands he'd been told were graying at the temples. I manage. That's not an answer. Emily finally looked up, and for a split second, he saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain? Anger? It disappeared so quickly he might have imagined it. Stress management is crucial for cardiovascular health, especially in high-pressure careers. What does your typical day look like? They fell into the rhythm of a medical consultation. Emily was thorough, asking questions about his diet, exercise routine, sleep patterns, family history. Her hands were steady as she checked his vitals, cool fingers pressing against his wrist to take his pulse. Thomas tried not to notice how close she stood, the faint scent of her perfume, something different from what she'd worn before, more sophisticated with notes of jasmine and cedar. Your blood pressure is elevated, she said, wrapping the cuff around his arm for a second reading. 140/95. Have you been under unusual stress recently? Only seeing you again, Thomas thought. Work's been demanding. We're closing a major acquisition. Emily made notes. I'm going to recommend some lifestyle modifications. Increase cardiovascular exercise to at least 30 minutes 5 times per week. Consider meditation or yoga for stress reduction. Cut back on caffeine and alcohol. She looked at him directly. And I'd like to see you again in 3 months for a follow-up, not wait another year. Emily, Dr. Chen, she corrected firmly. In this office, it's Dr. Chen. The rebuke stung more than it should have. Thomas nodded. Dr. Chen, I need to ask. A knock interrupted him. The door opened and a young girl stepped inside. 7, maybe 8 years old, wearing jeans and a purple hoodie with a unicorn on the front. She held a tablet, earbuds dangling around her neck. Her skin was a beautiful deep brown, her hair in 2 neat braids with colorful beads that clicked softly as she moved. Mommy, I finished my math lesson. Can I? The girl stopped, noticing Thomas. Oh, sorry, you have a patient. It's okay, sweetheart. Emily's entire demeanor transformed, her professional mask softening into pure maternal love. That's great about the math. Why don't you wait in my office? I'll be done soon, and we can get lunch. Okay, the girl smiled, revealing a gap where a front tooth was missing. She turned to leave, then paused, looking at Thomas with frank curiosity. Your eyes are gray. That's unusual. Thomas couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at this child who had his eyes. Not just gray, but that specific shade, like storm clouds over the ocean. And her nose, the slight upward tilt at the end, the shape of her jaw, the way her smile pulled higher on the left side. Sophie, go, Emily said, a warning note in her voice. Nice to meet you, Sophie called over her shoulder, already heading down the hall. The door closed. Silence crashed over the examination room like a wave. Thomas stared at Emily, his mind racing through calculations. 7 years old, maybe 8, depending on when her birthday fell. He'd left Emily 8 years ago in December. If she'd been pregnant, don't. Emily's voice cut through his thoughts like a scalpel. Don't even think about it. Emily, that little girl is my daughter. That's all you need to know. She has my eyes. Thomas slid off the examination table, standing despite still wearing the ridiculous hospital gown. She looks exactly like my sister did at that age. You can't expect me not to ask. I don't expect anything from you, Thomas. Emily's professional composure cracked, years of buried emotions seeping through. You made your choice 8 years ago. You chose your father's money and your precious partnership over us, over me. You don't get to walk back into my life now and demand answers. If she's mine. If. Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean when it's obvious? When anyone with eyes can see the resemblance? She set her tablet down with a sharp click. Yes, Thomas. Sophie is your daughter. Happy now? The world tilted. Thomas grabbed the examination table for support. A daughter. He had a daughter. 7 years of her life gone. First steps, first words, first day of school. All of it happened without him. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you? Emily's voice rose slightly before she caught herself, glancing at the door. When she spoke again, her words came out low and controlled, each one deliberate. I tried, Thomas. I called you 37 times in the 3 months after you left. I emailed. I showed up at your office building, and your doorman turned me away. Your father's lawyers sent me a cease and desist letter threatening legal action if I continued to harass you. So forgive me if I decided raising my daughter was more important than fighting your family's money and lawyers. Thomas felt sick. I never knew about any calls, any letters. My father, he couldn't finish. Of course, his father had intervened. Richard Barkley controlled everything in Thomas's life back then, including his communications. Emily, I swear, I had no idea. It doesn't matter now. Emily picked up her tablet again, her armor snapping back into place. Sophie is mine. I've raised her alone, put myself through residency alone, built this practice alone. We don't need you, but I'm her father. Biologically, yes. In any way that actually matters, no. Emily moved toward the door. I'll have the nurse draw blood for your lab work. Results will be ready in a few days. Make an appointment at the front desk for that 3-month follow-up. Her hand was on the doorknob when she paused. And Thomas, stay away from Sophie. She doesn't know about you, and I'd like to keep it that way. She has a good life, a stable life. Don't disrupt that. She left before he could respond. Thomas stood in the examination room, still in his hospital gown, his entire world rewritten in the span of 15 minutes. He had a daughter, a 7-year-old daughter who loved math and unicorns and had his eyes. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. 3 missed calls from his assistant, 2 from his business partner. The acquisition deal needed his attention. Contracts waited for his signature. A board meeting was scheduled for 2. His empire demanded his presence. Thomas looked at the phone, then at the closed door where Emily had disappeared. For 8 years, he'd convinced himself he'd made the right choice, that sacrificing love for success was what ambitious men did, that his father had been right. He'd been wrong about everything. The nurse appeared to draw his blood, making cheerful small talk he barely registered. Thomas dressed mechanically, his mind replaying every moment of the encounter. Sophie's gap-toothed smile, Emily's controlled fury, the 7 years of his daughter's life he'd missed because his father had blocked every attempt Emily made to contact him. Richard Berkeley had died 3 years ago. Heart attack at his desk, probably brought on by the same relentless ambition he'd instilled in his son. Thomas had grieved, but now he felt something closer to rage. His father had stolen his daughter from him, had let Thomas believe Emily had simply moved on, that their relationship had been a mistake he'd correctly avoided. At the front desk, Thomas made an appointment for January, 3 months away. The receptionist, Cheryl, according to her name tag, smiled brightly. Dr. Chen is wonderful, isn't she? So patient with everyone. And her daughter's adorable. Sophie sometimes does her homework in the waiting room after school. She seems like a great kid, Thomas managed. Oh, she is. Smart as a whip, just like her mom. Dr. Chen's a single mother, you know. Raised that girl all by herself while finishing medical school and residency. I don't know how she did it. But Sophie's so well-adjusted and happy. Some women are just made to be mothers, I guess. Thomas thanked her and left, stepping out into the San Francisco afternoon. Clouds had rolled in as predicted, turning the sky gray and heavy with coming rain. His car was parked in the underground garage, but he started walking instead, needing the movement, needing to think. His phone buzzed again. His business partner, Marcus. "Where are you? Meeting starts in 20 minutes. Thomas typed back. "Delayed? Start without me." He walked past the ferry building, watching tourists line up for artisan bread and organic coffee. A street performer played violin, the melancholy notes floating over the crowd. Thomas kept walking past Pier 39, past the sea lions barking on their floating docks, until he reached a quiet spot overlooking the bay. 8 years ago, he'd stood on this same waterfront with Emily. She'd just aced a major exam, and they'd celebrated with fish tacos from a food truck and cheap wine smuggled in a paper bag. They'd talked about the future, about the life they'd build together. Thomas had promised her everything, meant every word. Then his father had called him into the office. "I'm making you partner, son, youngest in the firm's history, but I need you focused. That girl, Emily, she's a distraction. She'll hold you back. You're meant for greatness, Thomas. Don't throw it away for puppy love." Thomas had argued. He'd fought for Emily, for their relationship. But his father had been relentless, wielding guilt and ambition like weapons. "I built this firm for you. Everything I've done so you could have this opportunity. Are you really going to throw it away? For what? A girl you've known less than a year?" In the end, Thomas had broken. He'd gone to Emily's apartment, given her some cowardly speech about timing being wrong and needing to focus on his career. She'd cried. He'd left, and then he'd buried himself in work, letting his father shield him from the consequences. Now, standing by the water with seagulls crying overhead and the first drops of rain beginning to fall, Thomas understood the real cost of his choice. Not just Emily's love, but 7 years of Sophie's childhood, 7 years of being a father. 7 years his daughter had grown up thinking he didn't want her. His phone buzzed again and again, the business world pulling at him, demanding his attention. Thomas looked at the screen, at the cascade of urgent messages about contracts and deals and profits. Then he thought about Sophie's gray eyes, so like his own, looking at him with innocent curiosity. He'd spent 8 years building an empire. Now, he had to figure out if there was any way to build a family from the ruins he'd left behind. Thomas turned and walked back toward his office. Rain beginning to fall in earnest now, soaking through his expensive suit. But for the first time in 8 years, he didn't care about appearances. He was too busy trying to figure out how to fix the biggest mistake of his life. The rain fell harder as Thomas entered his building, water streaming down the glass facade like tears. He took the elevator to the 20th floor, where Berkeley Investments occupied a corner suite with views of the entire bay. His assistant, Karen, jumped up when she saw him. "Mr. Berkeley, you're soaked. The meeting? Is Marcus handling it?" "Yes, but they really need you to tell them I'm dealing with a personal emergency." Thomas walked into his office, closing the door before Karen could respond. He stood at the window, looking down at the street below, at people rushing through the rain with umbrellas and newspapers held over their heads. Somewhere in this city, Emily was finishing her patient appointments. Somewhere in this city, Sophie was doing her homework, unaware that her entire world might be about to change. Somewhere in this city, Thomas's life had just tilted on its axis, and nothing would ever be the same. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Berkeley, I have a Dr. Chen on line 1. She says it's urgent." Thomas's heart stopped. He grabbed the phone. "Emily, we need to talk." Her voice was tight, controlled. "Not now. Sophie has ballet at 4, and I have evening appointments until 7, but after that, there's a coffee shop on Fillmore, the Dancing Cup, 8 o'clock. I'll be there." "Thomas," she paused. "Don't make me regret this." The line went dead. Thomas set the phone down carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter this fragile opening. She was willing to talk. That was something. That was more than he deserved. He spent the rest of the day on autopilot, signing documents he barely read, taking calls he barely heard. Marcus handled the acquisition meeting flawlessly, as Thomas knew he would. At 6, he left the office and went home to change, stripping off his damp suit and standing under a scalding shower until his skin turned red. At 7:45, Thomas parked across from the Dancing Cup, a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Through the window, he could see mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. Very Emily. She'd never liked corporate chains, had always preferred places with character and soul. He went in and ordered a black coffee he didn't want, choosing a table in the back corner. The cafe was half full, mostly students with laptops and young couples having quiet conversations. Piano music played softly overhead, something classical he didn't recognize. At 8:03, Emily walked in. She'd changed from her medical clothes into dark jeans and a cream sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, more like the woman he'd loved. She ordered tea, chamomile, he knew without asking, and joined him at the table. For a long moment, neither spoke. Emily wrapped her hands around her cup, staring at the steam rising from it. Finally, she said, "Sophie asked about you tonight." Thomas's chest tightened. "What did you tell her?" "That you were just a patient." "But she's smart, Thomas. She noticed the way I acted when she walked in. She knows something was different." Emily looked up, meeting his eyes. "I've always planned to tell her about you someday, when she was old enough to understand, but I thought I'd have more time to prepare." "What would you have told her?" "The truth." Emily's voice was steady. "That I loved you, that circumstances pulled us apart, that you didn't know about her, but if you had, I believed you would have wanted to be part of her life. I wouldn't have made you the villain, Thomas. Despite everything, I know the man I loved wouldn't have abandoned his child deliberately." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Your cease and desist letter said was from your father's lawyers, not from you." Emily took a sip of tea. "I figured that out eventually. I was angry for a long time, thinking you'd set your legal team on me. But then I remembered who you were before all the money and ambition consumed you. The man who volunteered at the free clinic with me, who stayed up all night helping me study for my boards, who cried at sad movies and made terrible puns and believed in making the world better." She smiled sadly. "That man wouldn't have sent lawyers after the woman he'd just broken up with. Your father would." Thomas felt something break loose in his chest. She'd seen through it all. Despite years of silence, despite raising their daughter alone, she'd understood. "I didn't know about the calls, the letters, any of it. I was a coward, Emily. I let my father control my life, and I've spent 8 years trying to convince myself it was worth it." Was it? The question hung between them. Thomas thought about his penthouse, his cars, his investment portfolio, the power lunches and gallery openings and charity galas where everyone wanted something from him, the empty bed he came home to every night, the relationships that never quite worked because none of those women were Emily. "No," he said simply. "It wasn't worth any of it." Emily nodded slowly. "Sophie wants to take piano lessons. She's obsessed with this composer, Yujia Wang, watches videos of her performances on repeat and tries to copy the hand movements. I can't afford a good piano or quality lessons right now, not with student loans and practice overhead, but I'm saving. By next year, maybe." Thomas started to speak, to offer to pay for it, to buy Sophie the best piano money could buy. But Emily held up a hand. "I'm not telling you this because I want your money. I'm telling you because that's the kind of thing a father should know about his daughter. She's brilliant, Thomas. Top of her class in everything. She reads 3 grades above her level. She's kind to other kids, especially the ones who get picked on. She has your analytical mind and my stubbornness, which is either going to make her a CEO or get her into a lot of trouble. I want to know her." The words came out raw, desperate. "Please, Emily, I know I have no right to ask. I know I walked away and missed everything important, but I want to be part of her life. However you'll let me, whatever terms you need." Emily was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflecting neon signs in puddles. Finally, she said, "If, and this is a massive if, I consider letting you into Sophie's life, we do it slowly, carefully, with her needs at the center of every decision. Not yours, not mine. She's been fine without a father for 7 years. If we're going to change that, it has to be because it makes her life better, not because it makes you feel less guilty. I understand." "Do you?" Emily leaned forward, intensity burning in her eyes. "Because this isn't about showing up for the fun parts, Thomas. It's not about being the cool dad who buys expensive presents and takes her to Disneyland. It's about being there when she's sick, when she has nightmares, when she fails a test or gets her heart broken or makes mistakes. It's about being consistent and reliable and putting her first, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. I can do that. You couldn't before. You chose your career over me, over the possibility of us. What's different now?" The question cut to the core of everything. Thomas took a deep breath. "What's different is that I've spent 8 years living the life I thought I wanted, and I've been miserable. What's different is that I see now what my father's ambition cost me, cost us. What's different is that for the first time in my life, I'm making a choice based on what actually matters instead of what looks impressive on paper." He met her eyes. "I can't undo the past 8 years. I can't give Sophie back the father she should have had, but I can start now, today, and I can promise you that I will show up every day for as long as you'll let me. Not perfectly. I'll make mistakes, but I'll be there." Emily studied him, searching for something. Whatever she saw must have been enough because she finally nodded. "Okay, we'll try, but we go at Sophie's pace, and if at any point this seems like it's hurting her instead of helping her, you walk away. Agreed?" "Agreed." They talked for another hour, working out logistics and boundaries. Sophie would need to be told the truth, but carefully, with a child therapist to help navigate the conversation. Thomas would have to pass a background check and take a parenting class. He'd start with supervised visits, maybe at the park or a museum, somewhere public and neutral. No promises about the future until they saw how Sophie responded. It was almost 10 when they left the cafe. On the sidewalk, Emily turned to him. "I need you to understand something, Thomas. I'm not doing this for you. I'm not even doing it for us. There is no us anymore. I'm doing this because Sophie deserves to know her father if he's willing to be her real parent. But the moment I think you're going to hurt her, this ends. Clear? Crystal clear." Emily walked to her car, an older Honda CR-V with a car seat visible in the back window. Thomas watched her drive away, tail lights disappearing into the San Francisco night. He stood there for a long time, rain starting up again in a light mist, trying to process everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, his life had been predictable, successful, but hollow. Now he had a daughter, an ex-girlfriend, who'd given him a chance he definitely didn't deserve, and absolutely no idea how to be a father. But for the first time in 8 years, Thomas felt something like hope. He drove home slowly, taking surface streets instead of the highway, watching the city lights blur in the rain. His penthouse felt emptier than usual when he walked in, all chrome and marble and expensive furniture arranged by an interior designer he'd never met. The kind of place designed to impress, not to live in. Certainly not the kind of place where a 7-year-old would feel comfortable. Thomas walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Somewhere out there, Emily was putting Sophie to bed, reading her a story, tucking her in, kissing her forehead the way parents did. All the small, sacred rituals of parenthood that Thomas had missed. He thought about his own father, Richard Berkeley, who'd been more interested in building a legacy than raising a son, who'd taught Thomas that love was weakness and ambition was virtue, who'd been so determined to mold Thomas into his image that he destroyed the one relationship that had made Thomas truly happy. Thomas wouldn't make the same mistakes. He couldn't. Sophie deserved better. She deserved a father who chose her, who showed up, who loved her more than any business deal or bank account. His phone lit up with an email from Marcus about tomorrow's meetings. Thomas stared at it, then opened his calendar. The next 3 months were packed with obligations, networking events, conferences, the machinery of success grinding on. He started canceling. not everything. He still had responsibilities, investors depending on him. But he cleared his mornings, freed up his weekends, made space in his life for something more important than profit margins. Tomorrow, he'd call the therapist Emily had recommended. He'd enroll in that parenting class. He'd start reading books about child development and how to be a good father. He'd do whatever it took to earn the privilege of being in Sophie's life. But tonight, he stood at his window and whispered to the rain-soaked city, "I have a daughter. Her name is Sophie, and she has my eyes." The next morning, Thomas was in his office by 7, determined to restructure his work life to accommodate his new reality. He'd barely made it through his first coffee when his phone rang. "Emily, we have a problem," she said without preamble. Sophie woke up asking questions about the man with gray eyes in Mommy's office. She asked if you were her daddy because she saw a picture in my room. An old one I forgot was there from before we broke up. Thomas, she knows. And she wants to meet you. Thomas's heart hammered against his ribs. "When?" "Today, after school, 3:30 at Golden Gate Park by the carousel. We tell her together and we answer her questions honestly. I won't lie to my daughter." Emily's voice softened slightly. "Are you ready for this?" "No, absolutely not." He had no idea what he was doing, no preparation, nothing but good intentions and bone-deep terror. "I'll be there," Thomas said. "Wear something casual. You'll scare her in a suit. And Thomas, don't bring gifts. Don't try to buy her affection. Just be real." 3:30. He had 8 hours to figure out how to tell his daughter he existed. Thomas left work at 2, going home to change into jeans and a navy sweater. He stared at himself in the mirror, seeing his father's face looking back, the same sharp jawline, the same intensity in those gray eyes. But Thomas was determined to be different, to break the cycle of choosing ambition over family. He drove to Golden Gate Park through midday traffic, arriving 15 minutes early. The carousel was already running, painted horses rising and falling to cheerful organ music. Children shrieked with delight, parents standing nearby with phones raised to capture the moment. At 3:28, Emily's Honda pulled into the parking lot. Sophie bounded out, still in her school uniform, khaki pants and a blue polo with a private school crest. Her backpack bounced as she ran toward the carousel, then stopped short when she saw Thomas standing there. Emily caught up, placing a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Sophie, this is Thomas Berkeley. Thomas, this is our daughter, Sophie Chen." "Our daughter." The words rewrote Thomas's entire existence. Sophie looked up at him with those gray eyes, his eyes, studying him with an intensity that was pure Emily. "Are you my daddy?" "God help him." "Yes," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "Yes, I am. Why haven't I met you before?" The question every child in this situation asked, the one with no good answer. Emily squeezed Sophie's shoulder gently. "Remember how we talked about how sometimes grown-ups make mistakes? Your daddy and I had some misunderstandings a long time ago. He didn't know about you, but now he does, and he wants very much to be part of your life." Sophie processed this with a seriousness no 7-year-old should have to employ. "Mom says you're rich." Despite everything, Thomas almost laughed. "I have money, yes. Mom says money isn't the same as being rich. She says being rich is about having people you love and doing work that matters." Sophie tilted her head. "Are you rich that way?" Out of the mouths of babes. Thomas crouched down to Sophie's level, bringing himself to her height. "Honestly, no, I haven't been, but I want to be. If you'll give me the chance, I'd like to try to be the kind of rich your mom means." Sophie considered this. Then with the devastating directness of a child, she asked, "Do you want to be my daddy, or do you just feel like you have to?" Thomas felt tears prick his eyes. "I want to, very much. I've missed 7 years of knowing you, Sophie, and that's the biggest regret of my life. I can't change the past, but I'd really like to be here for your future, if that's okay with you. Will you come to my ballet recital? It's in 3 weeks." "Absolutely." "And my science fair project? It's about how plants grow in different soils. I'll help if you want." "Do you like piano music? I want to learn piano, but Mom says we have to wait." Thomas glanced at Emily, who was watching this exchange with carefully controlled emotion. "I love piano music," he said to Sophie. "And you know what? I'd really like to help you learn. Would that be okay?" Sophie's entire face lit up. "Really? Can I start lessons soon?" "That's up to your mom. But I promise we'll figure it out together." For the first time since this conversation started, Sophie smiled. A real smile, gap-toothed and genuine. "Okay, you can be my daddy, but you have to promise not to leave again." The words hit harder than any business negotiation ever had. "I promise," Thomas said, meaning it with everything he had. "I'm not going anywhere." Sophie nodded, satisfied. Then with the quick mood shift of children, she grabbed Emily's hand. can I ride the carousel now? I want the white horse with the pink mane. Go ahead, baby. We'll watch from here. Sophie ran off, joining the line of excited children. Thomas stood slowly, his knees protesting the crouch. Emily watched their daughter with an expression of fierce protectiveness and love. Thank you, Thomas said quietly, for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet. You still have to actually show up. But her voice was gentler than before. She likes you. I wasn't sure she would. 7-year-olds can be brutal judges of character. They watched Sophie climb onto a white carousel horse, her braids flying as the music started and the ride began to turn. She waved at them frantically, and they waved back. Other parents stood around them, capturing memories, living the ordinary magic of childhood moments. I'll help with the piano lessons, Thomas said, and I'd like to set up a trust fund for Sophie, for college, for whatever she needs. I know you said you don't want my money, but Thomas, he stopped. Emily turned to look at him. Sophie doesn't need a trust fund right now. She needs a father who shows up for her ballet recital and helps with her science project and reads her bedtime stories. She needs consistency and presence. Can you do that? Because if you can't, if you're going to let your work consume you the way you did 8 years ago, then money is a poor substitute. I can do that. I will do that. Prove it. Emily's expression softened slightly. But yes, when the time comes, helping with piano lessons would mean a lot to her, to both of us. The carousel slowed and Sophie jumped off her horse, running back to them with breathless excitement. Did you see me? I didn't even hold on with both hands. I saw, Emily said, laughing. Very brave. Are you hungry? We could get ice cream. Can Thomas come? Sophie looked at him hopefully. If he'd like to, Emily said carefully. 3 pairs of eyes looked at Thomas. His phone was buzzing in his pocket. Probably work, probably something urgent. He ignored it. I'd love to, he said. They walked to an ice cream shop near the park. Sophie chattering between them about her day at school, her best friend Madison, her teacher Ms. Rodriguez, who was teaching them about the solar system. She was brilliant and funny and completely unguarded, sharing her world with them like the gift it was. Thomas got chocolate chip. Emily got mint. Sophie got strawberry with rainbow sprinkles and ate it with singular focus, getting more on her face than in her mouth. They sat on a bench watching ducks paddle around a pond, the afternoon sun breaking through clouds to paint everything gold. This, Thomas thought, this is what I was missing. Not the big moments, but the small ones. Ice cream and carousel rides and duck ponds. The ordinary poetry of being a family. His phone buzzed again and again. Thomas pulled it out, saw 15 missed calls and twice as many texts. Marcus, where are you? The investors are waiting. He'd completely forgotten. The meeting to close the acquisition deal, the one he'd been working on for 6 months. $20 million hanging in the balance. His partners were counting on him. Emily saw his face change. You need to go. Thomas looked at Sophie, who was now trying to feed breadcrumbs to a particularly bold duck. I have a meeting, an important one. I forgot about it. Go. Emily's voice was carefully neutral. We understand. But Sophie's face fell. You're leaving. This was the test, Thomas realized. The first of many. Choose work or choose family. Show Sophie what she could expect from him. Prove to Emily that he'd changed, or prove that he hadn't. Thomas looked at his phone one more time, saw the messages stacking up, the pressure mounting. $20 million, his partner's fury, his reputation on the line. Then he looked at Sophie's disappointed face, at Emily's resigned expression, at the family he'd just found and was already about to fail. He turned off his phone. The meeting can wait, Thomas said. I'm exactly where I need to be. Sophie's face transformed, disappointment melting into joy. Emily's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across her features. Thomas knew he'd just made a decision that would have professional consequences. Marcus would be furious. The investors might walk. His reputation as reliable and ruthless would take a hit. He didn't care. They spent another hour in the park. Sophie showed Thomas her favorite spots, the tree she liked to climb, the field where she practiced cartwheels, the spot where she'd once seen a hawk. She was so eager to share everything with him, to bring him into her world. When the sun started setting and Sophie began to yawn, Emily said they needed to go home. School night, homework and dinner and bed. Can Thomas have dinner with us? Sophie asked. Emily hesitated. This was moving fast, faster than the careful boundaries they'd discussed. But Sophie was looking at both of them with such hope. If your mom thinks that's okay, Thomas said carefully. Emily took a breath. Okay, but we're having leftovers. Nothing fancy. They drove separately to Emily's apartment in the Sunset District. a neighborhood of pastel row houses and fog-wreathed streets. Her place was on the second floor of a renovated Victorian, the kind of space that had probably been a single-family home once and was now divided into apartments. The rent had to be astronomical, even for a modest two-bedroom. Inside, the apartment was small but warm, full of life. Sophie's artwork covered the refrigerator. Books spilled from every shelf. A worn couch faced a modest TV. Everything was clean, but obviously used, loved, lived in. No interior designer had touched this space. This was a home, not a showcase. Sophie showed Thomas her room, a cozy space with twin bed, overflowing bookshelf, and a small desk where she did homework. Drawings covered the walls, houses and families and cats. One caught Thomas's attention, a crayon drawing of 3 people holding hands, a woman, a child, and an empty space where a third person should be. I drew that in kindergarten, Sophie said quietly, for Family Day. Everyone else drew their whole family, but I only had Mom. The teacher said it was okay to draw just us, but I always wondered about the missing person. Thomas's throat tightened. I'm sorry I wasn't there. But you're here now? Sophie looked up at him. I'm here now, and I'll keep being here, as much as your mom will let me. They ate reheated pasta at a small table in the kitchen, Sophie telling them both about the book she was reading in school. After dinner, she had homework, math problems that she solved with frightening speed. Thomas sat next to her, amazed at how naturally numbers came to her. She's tested gifted in mathematics, Emily said quietly, washing dishes at the sink. The school wants to move her up to 4th grade math, but I'm worried about her being with older kids socially. She's definitely got a talent for it, Thomas said, watching Sophie work through a problem that would have challenged many adults. At 8 o'clock, Emily announced bedtime. Sophie protested but accepted, giving Thomas a shy hug before heading to brush her teeth. Will you come again? She asked. If it's okay with your mom, I'd like to come as often as possible. Tomorrow? Sophie asked hopefully. Thomas looked at Emily, who was trapped between the logistics of her life and her daughter's happiness. How about Saturday? Emily suggested. Thomas can take you to the aquarium if he wants. I have to work that morning anyway. Yes! Sophie bounced on her toes. The aquarium. Can we see the jellyfish? Absolutely, Thomas said, his heart expanding in his chest. After Sophie was tucked in, Emily walked Thomas to the door. They stood in the small entryway, suddenly awkward without their daughter as a buffer. You did good today, Emily said. Turning off your phone, choosing to stay, that was the right call. There will be fallout, Thomas admitted, but it was still the right call. Emily nodded. About Saturday. I trust you with her, but she barely knows me, Thomas finished. I understand. Would you feel better if you came too, at least for the first few outings? Relief crossed Emily's face. Actually, yes, I would. Not because I think you'll hurt her, but because this is all so new for her. Having both of us there might make it easier. Then we'll do it together. Thomas paused at the door. Thank you, Emily, for today, for all of it. I know I don't deserve this chance. Maybe not, Emily said. But Sophie deserves a father, so don't mess this up. Thomas drove home through fog-shrouded streets, his phone still off, his mind replaying the day. By the time he walked into his penthouse, it was nearly 10. He finally turned on his phone and watched it explode with messages. Marcus had called 17 times. The investors had walked. The deal was dead. His partners were furious, questioning his judgment and commitment. There would be a meeting tomorrow morning at 7 to discuss his priorities and future with the firm. Thomas sat in his empty living room, surrounded by expensive furniture and expensive art, and felt nothing but relief. He'd made the right choice. For the first time in 8 years, he'd made the right choice. That night, he dreamed of Sophie's gap-toothed smile and the way she'd hugged him goodbye, small arms wrapped tight around his waist. He dreamed of Emily's cautious hope and the sound of a child's laughter filling his hollow life. He dreamed of the family he'd found and the man he was finally becoming. The next morning, Thomas walked into the conference room at 7 sharp. His 3 partners sat waiting, Marcus in the middle with arms crossed and expression thunderous. The investors pulled out, Marcus said without preamble. $20 million gone. Because you couldn't be bothered to show up to a meeting you scheduled. What the hell happened to you yesterday, Thomas? Thomas sat down calmly. I found out I have a 7-year-old daughter. I spent the afternoon getting to know her. The room went silent. Marcus's anger deflated slightly. What? Her name is Sophie. Her mother is Emily Chen, a woman I dated 8 years ago. I didn't know Emily was pregnant when we broke up. I didn't know about Sophie until I walked into a doctor's appointment and saw her. Yesterday was the first time I met my daughter. Thomas looked at each of his partners in turn. And when she asked me to stay, when I had to choose between this deal and being there for her first day of knowing me, I chose her. I'll choose her every time. His partner Sarah, a sharp woman in her 50s, who'd always been the most understanding, spoke first. That's quite a revelation. How are you handling it? Honestly, I'm terrified. I have no idea how to be a father, but I'm going to learn, which means my priorities are shifting. I'm still committed to this firm, but I won't be available evenings and weekends the way I have been. I'll need flexibility for school events and doctor appointments and whatever else comes up. If that's not acceptable, I understand, but I won't change my mind. Marcus stood abruptly. This is unacceptable. We built this firm on the understanding that work comes first. That's how you get ahead, how you win. Your father understood that. My father died alone in his office, estranged from his son and bitter about life, Thomas said quietly. He built an empire and lost everything that mattered. I won't make the same mistake. So you're just going to throw away everything we've built? No, I'm going to keep building it, but differently, smarter. There's no point being successful if you're miserable, Marcus. I've spent 8 years being miserable. I'm done. The meeting lasted another hour, tense and difficult. In the end, they reached a compromise. Thomas would step back from his managing partner role, focus on investment strategy and client relations, but delegate day-to-day operations. He'd take a 20% cut in partnership share. He'd miss some opportunities that required round-the-clock availability. He didn't care. He left the office at 3 to pick up a gift he'd ordered, not for Sophie, but for Sophie's mother. Saturday arrived sunny and crisp, perfect aquarium weather. Thomas met Emily and Sophie at their apartment at 9, and they drove together to the aquarium of the bay on Pier 39. Sophie talked non-stop during the drive, explaining everything she knew about ocean ecosystems and jellyfish life cycles. She's been reading marine biology books all week, Emily said, amused. I think you've created a monster. At the aquarium, Sophie dragged them both to the jellyfish exhibit, pressing her face against the glass to watch the creatures pulse through their tank. They're so beautiful, she breathed, like aliens from another planet. Thomas stood beside his daughter, watching light play through translucent bodies. Emily stood on Sophie's other side, completing their small constellation. To anyone watching, they looked like a normal family on a normal Saturday outing, but there was nothing normal about any of this. Every moment felt precious and terrifying, like something that might vanish if Thomas made one wrong move. After the aquarium, they got lunch at a cafe overlooking the water. Sophie ordered a grilled cheese and fries, explaining to Thomas that she didn't like pickles but loved ketchup, that her favorite color was purple, but sometimes it was blue, that she could almost do a backbend in gymnastics class. She's a little chatterbox today, Emily said, laughing. You're getting the full Sophie experience. I love it, Thomas said honestly. I want to know everything. After lunch, Sophie asked if they could walk to the end of the pier to see the sea lions. They made their way through weekend crowds, tourists and street performers, and the smell of sourdough bread. Sophie walked between them, occasionally grabbing each of their hands to swing her arms. At the sea lion docks, they stood watching the huge animals bark and jostle for space. Sophie giggled at their antics, mimicking their sounds, until Emily and Thomas were both laughing too. It was such a small moment, such an ordinary moment, but Thomas felt it settle into his chest like a promise. This is what happiness looks like. On the drive back, Sophie fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the day. Emily and Thomas talked quietly in the front, careful not to wake her. She's going to crash hard tonight, Emily said. No fight at bedtime for once. Thank you for letting me be part of this, Thomas said. I know it's complicated. Emily was quiet for a moment. It's getting less complicated, she finally said. You're showing up, Thomas. Consistently, that means something. They pulled up outside Emily's apartment building. Thomas helped carry a sleeping Sophie upstairs, laying her gently on her bed, while Emily pulled off her shoes and covered her with a blanket. Sophie murmured something in her sleep, a small smile on her face. In the living room, Emily handed Thomas an envelope. What's this? Information on a parenting class starting next week. You mentioned you wanted to take one. I looked into options and found this program specifically for parents new to their children's lives. It covers everything from age-appropriate communication to co-parenting strategies. She paused. I signed us both up. If you're serious about this, let's do it right. Thomas looked at the envelope, feeling the weight of it. I'll be there. I know. Emily walked him to the door. Thomas, I need you to understand something. Sophie is falling in love with you fast. Kids do that. They're all in, no guards up, which means if you decide this is too hard, if you back out, you won't just disappoint her, you'll devastate her. So I need to know right now, before we go any further, are you all in? Because if there's any doubt, any hesitation, tell me now, before she gets more attached. Thomas met her eyes. I'm all in, no doubt, no hesitation. She's my daughter, Emily. I've missed 7 years of her life. I'm not missing another day by choice. Emily studied him, searching for cracks in his conviction. She must not have found any because she finally nodded. Okay, then we keep going. Slowly, carefully, but we keep going. After Thomas left, he sat in his car for a long time, just breathing, trying to process the enormity of his new reality. A month ago, his life had been predictable. Success, emptiness, routine. Now he had a daughter who talked about jellyfish like they were magic. He had an ex-girlfriend who was giving him a second chance he didn't deserve. He had purpose beyond profit margins. His phone rang. Marcus, the Nakamura group called, Marcus said without greeting. They heard about the blown investor deal. They're interested in a potential acquisition of their North American assets. Huge opportunity, Thomas. Bigger than the deal we lost. But they want to meet next Saturday, all day. Are you available? Next Saturday. Thomas pulled up his calendar. Sophie's ballet recital was next Saturday at 2. Emily had already given him the details, made him promise to be there. I'm not available Saturday, Thomas said. Thomas, this is... I know what it is, and I'm not available. Counter with Sunday or a weekday. If they're serious, they'll make it work. Silence on the other hand. Then Marcus said slowly, You've really changed. Yeah, Thomas said. I have. He went home to his empty penthouse and did something he hadn't done in years. He called his sister Rebecca, who lived in Boston with her husband and 2 kids. They'd been estranged since their father's funeral, when Thomas had thrown himself back into work instead of grieving with family. Thomas? Rebecca sounded shocked. Is everything okay? I have a daughter, Thomas said. Her name is Sophie. She's 7, and I was hoping you could tell me everything I need to know about being a father, because I'm completely terrified and have no idea what I'm doing. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, warm and genuine. Oh my God, Uncle Thomas is Dad Thomas now. This I have to hear. They talked for 2 hours. Rebecca told him about play dates and school projects and the importance of showing up even when you're exhausted. She told him that being a parent means sometimes you fail, but you have to keep trying anyway. She told him their father had gotten it all wrong, that legacy wasn't about money or power. It was about the people you love and the memories you make. Does Sophie know about Aunt Rebecca? She asked. Not yet, but I'd like her to. Would you and David and the kids want to come visit? Maybe during Sophie's winter break? I know it's short notice. We'll be there, Rebecca said immediately. Thomas, I'm really proud of you. Dad would have hated this choice, which means it's probably the right one. After they hung up, Thomas stood at his window looking out at the city. His phone buzzed with another work email, another crisis requiring his attention. He dealt with it efficiently, then set the phone aside. Tomorrow was Sunday. Emily had mentioned Sophie had a gymnastics class at 10. Thomas wasn't invited, wasn't supposed to just show up, but he wanted to see her, wanted to watch her attempt her backbends and cheer her on. He texted Emily, Would it be weird if I came to watch Sophie's gymnastics class tomorrow? I know I'm not on the schedule, but I'd really like to be there. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, appeared again. Finally, she'd love that. Classes at Mission Gymnastics Center. Come at 9:45 if you want to watch warm-ups. Fair warning, it's mostly moms, and they will interrogate you about who you are and why you're there. Thomas smiled. I can handle that. Can you? Because Martha Chen, no relation, runs the Parent Watch area like a military operation. She made one dad cry last month. I've negotiated with hostile investors and survived my father's board meetings. How bad can it be? Oh, you sweet summer child. See you tomorrow. Don't say I didn't warn you. Sunday morning, Thomas arrived at the gymnastics center at 9:40. The building was a converted warehouse, music and children's shouts echoing from within. In the waiting area, a group of parents sat on bleachers behind a large window overlooking the gym floor. Most were mothers, a few fathers scattered among them. A woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a clipboard spotted Thomas immediately. New parent, sign in here. Child's name, your name, emergency contact if you're not the primary. Thomas Berkeley, Sophie Chen's father. The woman, Martha Chen presumably, looked up sharply. Sophie's father? Emily never mentioned... She stopped, clearly recalculating. I see. Welcome, Master Berkeley. I'm Martha, head of the Parent Watch program. Rules. No coaching from the bleachers, no disrupting class, no flash photography. Questions? No, ma'am. Good. Sophie's class is just starting. She pointed to where children in leotards were lining up on the floor. Thomas spotted Sophie immediately, her braids tied back, wearing a purple leotard with sparkles. She was talking animatedly to the girl next to her, probably Madison, her best friend. Emily stood nearby, phone in hand, clearly having just dropped Sophie off. She saw Thomas and waved, surprise and pleasure crossing her face. The class began. Thomas watched his daughter attempt cartwheels and balance beam work, her fierce concentration obvious even from the bleachers. She fell once, frustration flashing across her face, but got back up immediately. Pure determination, pure Emily. She's good, Martha said, settling onto the bleacher next to Thomas. Natural athlete. Emily's done a wonderful job raising her alone. A pause. Though I suppose she wasn't alone by choice. Thomas kept his eyes on Sophie. It's complicated, but I'm here now. Martha's tone made it clear she was reserving judgment. Sophie's a special girl, bright, kind, resilient. She doesn't need anyone disrupting her life or breaking her heart. I don't plan to. No one ever plans to, Mr. Berkeley. But intentions don't matter much when a child is crying because daddy disappeared. So let me be very clear. This is a tight-knit community. We look out for our own. Emily and Sophie are our own. If you hurt them, you'll answer to every parent in this room. She smiled pleasantly. Just so we understand each other. Understood, Thomas said. The other parents were less subtle in their curiosity. During the 15-minute break halfway through class, several moms approached with transparent questions, disguised as small talk. Where did he live? What did he do? How did he know Emily? Was he planning to be around regularly? Thomas answered honestly, aware he was being vetted. These women were Sophie's village, the community that had supported Emily while he'd been absent. He needed to prove himself to them as much as to Emily and Sophie. When class ended, Sophie ran over, sweaty and beaming. Thomas, you came. Did you see my cartwheel? I finally got my legs straight. I saw. You were amazing. Emily joined them, smiling. Someone's showing off today. I want Thomas to see that I'm good at gymnastics, Sophie said seriously. So he knows I'm not just good at math. Thomas's heart clenched. She wanted to impress him. This tiny person wanted her father to be proud of her. Sophie, I'm already impressed by everything about you. You're smart and brave and kind and incredibly talented. I'm lucky to be your dad. Sophie's face lit up. Then spontaneously she hugged him, sweaty and small and perfect. Thomas hugged her back, feeling Emily's eyes on them both. Ice cream? Sophie asked hopefully when she pulled away. Sophie, you can't ask for ice cream every time we see Thomas, Emily said, but she was smiling. Why not? It's tradition now. Is it? Thomas looked at Emily, who shrugged, apparently. So they went for ice cream again, becoming regulars at the shop by the park. Sophie got strawberry with rainbow sprinkles again, declaring it her signature flavor. They sat on the same bench as last time, watching the same ducks, but everything felt different, more settled, more real. Thomas? Sophie asked between licks of her cone. Will you still come see me even when it's not Saturday, like regular days? Thomas glanced at Emily, who gave a slight nod. I'd like to if that's okay with you and your mom. Maybe I could pick you up from school sometimes. Or we could have dinner during the week? Yes. Sophie bounced excitedly. Can you come to my science fair? It's in 2 weeks. I'm presenting my plant project. I'll be there. And my ballet recital. It's next Saturday. Wouldn't miss it. And can you help me practice piano? Mom says we can start lessons soon. Thomas felt the weight of these promises, understanding that each one was a sacred trust. Yes, to all of it, Sophie. I promise. After ice cream, they walked Sophie back to Emily's car. She was tired now, the excitement of the day catching up. Emily buckled her in, and Sophie's eyes were already drooping. In the parking lot, Emily turned to Thomas. That was really good today. The gymnastics moms approved of you, which is no small feat. Martha gave me a full report. He seems genuine, but we're watching him. High praise from her. Thomas laughed. She's terrifying. She's protective. They all are. Sophie and I are lucky to have them. Emily leaned against her car. The parenting class starts Wednesday, 7 p.m. at the community center on Judah. Can you make it? I'll be there. And about picking Sophie up from school. Her school gets out at 3:15. If you're serious about that, maybe Wednesdays. I have late appointments those days, and it would actually help me a lot. Consider it done. Just text me the address and any procedures I need to know. Emily studied him for a long moment. You know what surprises me most about all this? What? How natural you are with her. I expected you to be awkward, maybe try too hard, but you're just present, like you've been doing this all along. She smiled softly. It's good to see. Sophie deserves that. I'm making up for lost time, Thomas said. Every moment with her feels precious. I don't want to waste any of it. Emily's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her face. Thomas, She stopped. Never mind, we should go. Sophie needs a nap before dinner. Emily, what were you going to say? She shook her head. Another time. This is all still so new. Let's focus on Sophie for now. Thomas watched her drive away, wondering what she'd almost said. In the past week, something had shifted between them. Not romance. That was years dead, complicated by hurt and time, but something softer. Understanding, maybe, or forgiveness. He wasn't sure. The parenting class. Wednesday night was held in a church basement. Folding chairs arranged in a circle. 10 other parents attended, all in various stages of reconnecting with children. The instructor, Dr. Patricia Gomez, was a family therapist with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. This isn't about being perfect, she told the group. It's about being present and consistent. Children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who show up and keep showing up, even when it's hard. Over the next 2 hours, they discussed age-appropriate communication, managing expectations, navigating co-parenting relationships, and healing from past absence. Thomas took notes frantically, trying to absorb everything. Emily sat beside him, occasionally adding comments from her experience. During the break, another father approached Thomas. You're Sophie's dad, right? Emily mentioned you in the intro. I'm David, reconnecting with my twins after 5 years. They talked about the challenges of building relationships from scratch, the guilt that came with every milestone you'd missed. David was honest about his struggles, how his daughters were angry and testing him constantly. But I keep showing up, David said. Every Tuesday and Thursday for dinner every other weekend. Eventually, they'll trust that I'm not leaving again. At least that's what Dr. Gomez says. Emily joined them, and the 3 parents talked until class resumed. By the end of the night, Thomas felt both more prepared and more aware of how much he didn't know. In the parking lot afterward, Emily said, "That was intense, but helpful." Thomas unlocked his car. "Same time next week?" "Yeah. Hey, Thomas, I meant what I said at the aquarium. You're doing really well with Sophie. Better than I expected." "Low bar?" She laughed. "Maybe, but you're clearing it easily. That counts for something." Wednesday afternoon, Thomas left work at 2:30 to pick up Sophie from school. Mission Heights Academy was an excellent private school in Noe Valley, diverse and academically rigorous. The kind of school that cost tuition Thomas could easily afford, but Emily struggled to pay. They needed to talk about that, about all the financial support he wanted to provide, but not yet, not while everything was still so fragile. Thomas waited with other parents outside the school entrance. At 3:15, children poured out in a tsunami of noise and energy. Sophie emerged with her friend Madison, both girls deep in conversation. When Sophie spotted Thomas, her face transformed. "You came!" She ran over, backpack bouncing. "Madison, this is my dad." "My dad." The words made Thomas's chest tight. Madison, a girl with glasses and dozens of tiny braids, looked skeptical. "I thought you didn't have a dad." "I do now," Sophie said proudly. "He just found out about me. It's complicated. Right, Thomas?" "Right," Thomas managed. They said goodbye to Madison, and Thomas walked Sophie to his car, the Bentley, which he now realized was ridiculous for picking up a 7-year-old. Sophie didn't seem to mind, climbing into the back seat with wide eyes. "This car is fancy," she said. "Mom's car has crackers in the seats." Thomas made a mental note to buy Emily a new car, then immediately checked himself. That was the old Thomas thinking, the one who solved problems by throwing money at them. Emily wouldn't want his charity. She'd want his partnership. "Where should we go?" Thomas asked. "Your mom said I could take you for a few hours before dinner." "Library?" Sophie suggested hopefully. "I need books for my science fair research." The public library it was. Thomas parked and followed Sophie inside, watching her navigate the children's section with confidence. She pulled books about botany and soil science, explaining her project as she went. "I'm testing whether plants grow better in different types of soil. I have clay, sand, loam, and peat moss. Same plants, same water, same sunlight, just different soil. I hypothesize that loam will be best because it has balanced drainage and nutrients." "That's a solid hypothesis," Thomas said, impressed. "How long have you been running the experiment?" 4 weeks. I'm measuring growth every 3 days and documenting with photos. Miss Rodriguez says my methodology is high school level. They checked out books and walked to a nearby cafe. While Sophie worked on homework, Thomas watched her solve math problems with the same analytical approach he used for investment analysis. She was definitely his daughter. Thomas, Sophie looked up from her worksheet. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you leave Mom before I was born? There it was, the question he'd been dreading. Thomas set down his coffee carefully. That's a complicated question with no good answer, sweetheart. But I'll try to explain. When your mom and I were together, I was offered an important job. My father told me I had to choose between the job and your mom. I made the wrong choice. I chose the job because I thought it was what I was supposed to do, what would make me successful. But being successful without the people you love just makes you lonely. I didn't know your mom was pregnant when I left. If I had known, I would have made a different choice. I'll always regret not being there for you and your mom. Sophie processed this with her characteristic seriousness. Do you still love Mom? Thomas's breath caught. It's complicated. That's what adults always say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to admit it. Sophie, it's okay. I'm just asking. She went back to her math, leaving Thomas reeling. Did he still love Emily? He'd spent 8 years trying to convince himself he didn't, that what they'd had was just youthful infatuation. But seeing her again, watching her with Sophie, remembering who they'd been together, the question felt more complicated than he wanted to admit. At 5:30, Thomas dropped Sophie back at the apartment. Emily answered the door in scrubs, clearly just home from work. How was pickup? Great! We went to the library and got books for my science fair. Sophie hugged Thomas goodbye. See you Saturday at my recital. After Sophie went inside to wash her hands for dinner, Emily stepped into the hallway. She seems happy. She asked me today why I left you, Thomas said. Before she was born. Emily's expression tightened. What did you tell her? The truth, that I chose wrong, that I regretted it. He paused. She also asked if I still love you. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Emily said quietly, what did you tell her? That it was complicated. That's the truth, Emily said. It is complicated. We can't go back to what we were, Thomas. Too much has changed, but we can be good co-parents, good partners in raising Sophie. That's enough. Was it? Thomas wasn't sure anymore, but he nodded. That's enough. Friday evening, Thomas's assistant brought him a folder marked urgent. Inside was a proposal from the Nakamura group, the deal Marcus had mentioned. They wanted to meet Sunday morning, not Saturday as originally proposed, but still inconvenient given that Thomas had promised to help Sophie prepare for her recital. He called Marcus. Counter with Monday. If they're serious, they'll adjust. Thomas, they're flying in from Tokyo. Monday, or we don't meet at all. Thomas hung up before Marcus could argue. His phone rang immediately. Marcus again. What the hell has gotten into you? This is $50 million we're talking about. $50 million. You're going to blow that over a kid's dance recital? Ballet recital, Thomas corrected. And yes, I am, because I promised Sophie I'd be there. If Nakamura wants this deal, they'll meet Monday. If they don't, there will be other deals. There's only one Sophie. Marcus was silent for a long moment. You know what? Good. Good for you. Your father would be appalled, which means you're probably doing the right thing. I'll push for Monday. Thomas smiled. Thanks, Marcus. Don't thank me. Just make sure this parenting thing doesn't completely destroy what we've built. It won't. It's just changing my priorities. The work will still get done, just differently. Saturday morning, Thomas arrived at Emily's apartment at 9 with a garment bag. Sophie answered the door in her practice leotard, hair already pulled into a tight bun. You're early, she said happily. Good. I need to practice my pirouettes. And Mom says you have to watch to make sure I'm spotting correctly. For the next 2 hours, Thomas watched Sophie practice her ballet routine. Emily supervised, occasionally correcting Sophie's form. It was domestic and normal and perfect. By noon, Sophie was exhausted and nervous. What if I mess up? She worried, eating the sandwich Emily had made. What if I fall during my solo? Then you'll get back up, Thomas said. That's what you did at gymnastics, remember? You fell on the balance beam and got right back up. That's all anyone can ask. But there will be so many people watching, and they'll all be proud of you no matter what, because you worked hard and you're brave enough to perform. That takes courage. Sophie nodded, reassured. At 1:30, they left for the recital venue, a small theater in the Mission District. Backstage, Sophie disappeared with her class, leaving Thomas and Emily in the audience. The theater filled with families, cameras ready, anticipation building. She's so nervous, Emily said, wringing her hands. I hope she does okay. She'll be great, Thomas assured her, wishing he felt as confident as he sounded. The lights dimmed. The recital began with the youngest students, tiny ballerinas stumbling through simple routines while parents cooed and recorded everything. Sophie's intermediate class came third, and Thomas felt his heart rate spike when the curtain rose. There she was, fourth from the left, in a white tutu and pink tights, her face serious with concentration. The music began. something classical Thomas didn't recognize, and the girls began to dance. Sophie was beautiful, graceful and focused, hitting every mark, her arms fluid and extended just right. She did her pirouettes without stumbling, landed her jumps cleanly. When her brief solo came, just 8 counts, but terrifying for a 7-year-old, she nailed it, finishing with a smile that lit up her entire face. Thomas felt tears prick his eyes. He was crying at his daughter's ballet recital. His father would have been mortified. Thomas didn't care. Beside him, Emily was openly weeping, pride and joy radiating from her. Their eyes met, and for a moment they were just 2 parents sharing their daughter's triumph. When the performance ended, they waited in the lobby while Sophie changed. She emerged still in her stage makeup, glowing with accomplishment. "Did you see? I didn't fall. You were perfect," Emily said, hugging her tight. "Absolutely perfect," Thomas agreed. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" Emily laughed through her tears. "Of course we can, baby." At the ice cream shop, their place now, truly, Sophie recounted every moment of the performance, riding high on adrenaline and success. Other families from the recital were there too, and several parents stopped to congratulate Sophie. Martha from gymnastics appeared with her granddaughter, also a dancer. "Well performed, Sophie," Martha said. Then to Thomas and Emily, "Beautiful family you have here." After Martha walked away, Sophie said thoughtfully, "We are a family now, aren't we? All 3 of us." Thomas looked at Emily, who looked back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Yes," Emily said finally. "We're a family. A non-traditional one maybe, but a family." "Good," Sophie said, satisfied. "Madison has 2 houses because her parents are divorced. Will I have 2 houses too?" The question hung in the air. Emily said carefully, "Would you like to spend time at Thomas's place sometimes? Maybe once we all get to know each other better. Could I have my own room there?" Sophie asked Thomas. "Absolutely," Thomas said, his mind already redesigning his spare bedroom. "You could help decorate it however you want. Purple. Everything purple. And bookshelves and maybe a fish tank. We can make that happen." After ice cream, Emily said she needed to get home. Sophie had been up since 6 and was crashing fast. In the parking lot, Sophie hugged Thomas goodbye, then paused. "Will you still come even after today, even though the recital is over? I'm picking you up from school Wednesday, remember? And I'll be at your science fair in 2 weeks. And every Wednesday after that if you want. I'm not going anywhere, Sophie. Promise?" "Promise." After they drove away, Thomas sat in his car, emotionally wrung out. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Marcus. He called back. "Good news," Marcus said. "Nakamura agreed to Monday at 9. You've got your kid time and your deal. Thanks for pushing for it." "Yeah, well, turns out I'm a softie. Don't tell anyone." A pause. "How was the recital?" "Perfect." She was perfect. "Good. Now get back to being ruthless investor Thomas Monday morning, okay? Some of us miss him. He'll be there," Thomas promised, just with better priorities. That night, alone in his penthouse, Thomas started clearing out his spare bedroom. The generic furniture went into storage. He measured for shelves and researched fish tanks. He ordered purple paint, 3 different shades, not sure which Sophie would prefer. He bought children's hangers for a closet that had only ever held his overflow of business suits. He was building a space for his daughter in his life, literally and figuratively. The work felt good, purposeful in a way his career never had. Sunday afternoon, Thomas's sister Rebecca called. "Okay, I need to know everything. You mentioned a daughter in passing and then went radio silent for a week." Thomas told her the whole story while continuing to work on Sophie's room. Rebecca listened, asking questions, offering advice. "You need to meet her," Thomas said. "You're her aunt. She should know her family." "David and I are booking flights for Christmas," Rebecca said. 2 weeks. We'll stay at a hotel. I know your place isn't kid-friendly. It will be by then," Thomas promised, looking at the half-painted walls. "Thomas, I'm really proud of you. You're finally becoming the man you were supposed to be all along." After they hung up, Thomas kept painting. Purple walls for a purple-loving girl. A room where Sophie could stay on weekends, where she'd feel safe and loved. A room that said, "You belong here." Monday morning, Thomas walked into the Nakamura meeting, focused and prepared. The negotiations lasted 7 hours, breaks for coffee and lunch, both sides carefully feeling out terms. By 5 p.m., they had a preliminary agreement. $50 million, the biggest deal of Thomas's career. "Congratulations," Mr. Nakamura said, shaking Thomas's hand. "You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Berkeley. Thank you for accommodating our schedule," Thomas replied. After the Japanese executives left, Marcus cornered Thomas. "That was masterful. Vintage Thomas. See? You can be a dad and still close major deals." "I'm learning," Thomas said. "Balance instead of obsession. Revolutionary concept." Marcus grinned. Now go. I'm sure you have dad duties. Thomas did. He'd promised to help Sophie with her science fair display boards. He stopped at an art supply store, buying poster board and markers and printed photographs Sophie had emailed him of her plant experiment results. At Emily's apartment, Sophie spread her materials across the kitchen table. I need to make graphs showing plant growth over time, she explained, and include photos documenting each measurement day and a hypothesis and conclusion section. They worked together for 2 hours, Thomas helping with layout while Sophie did the creative work. Emily made dinner, chicken and vegetables, and they all ate at the small table, Sophie still talking about her project between bites. It was ordinary, completely, beautifully ordinary, and Thomas realized this was what he'd been missing. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but weeknight dinners and homework help, and being present for the small moments that made up a life. Thomas? Sophie looked at him seriously. Are you and Mom going to get married again? Emily choked on her water. Sophie? What? Madison says when parents have a baby together, they're supposed to be married. You and Thomas had me together. So shouldn't you be married? It doesn't work that way, sweetie, Emily said gently. Thomas and I aren't together anymore, but we both love you, and we're working together to take care of you. That's what matters. Sophie frowned. But don't you want to be together? You both seem happy when we're all together. Sophie, that's enough, Emily said firmly. Adults have complicated feelings. Thomas and I are figuring things out as we go. Right now we're focused on being good parents to you, okay? Okay, Sophie said, but she didn't look convinced. After dinner, Thomas helped clean up while Sophie finished her homework. In the kitchen, Emily said quietly, sorry about that. She's been asking questions like that more often lately. It's natural, Thomas said. She sees families at school where the parents are together. She wants that for herself. But we can't give her that, can we? Emily looked at him directly. Thomas didn't have an answer. I don't know, he said honestly. A month ago, I would have said no, definitely not. But now, I don't know what's possible anymore. Emily was quiet for a moment. We can't base relationship decisions on what Sophie wants. That's not fair to anyone, especially her. If we were ever going to try again, it would have to be because we both genuinely wanted it, not because we're playing house for our daughter. Agreed, Thomas said. But Emily, is it possible, hypothetically, could we ever get past what happened? I don't know, Emily said softly. Part of me will always remember how much it hurt when you left. But another part sees how you've shown up these past few weeks, how good you are with Sophie, how hard you're trying. I see glimpses of the man I loved, but I also know people don't really change. Not fundamentally. What if I'm not changing? What if I'm just finally becoming who I was supposed to be all along? Their eyes held for a long moment. Then Sophie called from the living room, breaking the spell. Thomas, come help me with this math problem. The moment passed. Thomas helped with math, then left around 9, driving home through San Francisco streets, thinking about Emily's words. People don't really change. Was that true? Or could someone reshape themselves given enough reason? The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Thomas picked Sophie up from school every Wednesday. They'd go to the library or the park, or sometimes just back to her apartment where she'd do homework while he worked on his laptop nearby. Quiet, simple time together. Building trust, building relationship, building the foundation of real fatherhood. The science fair arrived on a Thursday evening. The school gymnasium was transformed into a showcase of student projects, each child standing proudly beside their display. Sophie's exhibit was impressive. Professional-looking graphs, detailed photographs, clear hypothesis and conclusion. The loam soil produced the healthiest plants, Sophie explained to judges walking through. This confirms my hypothesis that balanced drainage and nutrients produce optimal growth conditions. Thomas stood back, watching his daughter present her work with confidence. Emily appeared beside him and they watched together. She's so proud, Emily whispered. She's been practicing her presentation all week. When the judges moved on, Sophie ran over. How did I do? You were amazing, Thomas said. Clear, confident, excellent data presentation. I'm so proud of you. Sophie beamed. Then casually, as if it wasn't earth-shattering, she said, Madison's dad couldn't make it tonight. She's sad, but I told her it's okay because I have my dad here. That made her feel better. Thomas felt his heart crack open. I'll always be here for your important events, he promised. The science fair lasted 2 hours. When it ended and they were walking to the parking lot, Emily said, I have something I need to tell you. She looked nervous. What is it? The hospital where I did my residency offered me a position. It's a big opportunity. Teaching hospital, research opportunities, better salary, but it's in Seattle. Thomas felt the world tilt. Seattle. I haven't accepted. I wanted to talk to you first. Because of Sophie. Because of everything. Emily wrapped her arms around herself. A month ago, this would have been an easy yes. But now you're part of Sophie's life. You're picking her up from school, attending her events, becoming a real father to her. How do I take that away from her, from you? When do they need an answer? 2 weeks. They stood in the parking lot while other families drove away, the weight of this decision settling over them. Finally, Thomas said, let's talk about this properly. Not here. Can we have dinner this weekend? Just us? Without Sophie? Like a date? Emily looked startled. Like two adults who need to make important decisions about their daughter's future, Thomas clarified, though the idea of it being a date made his heart race in ways he wasn't ready to examine. Okay, Emily said. Saturday. Sophie's staying overnight at Madison's. I'm free. Thomas chose a quiet restaurant in North Beach, Italian. Intimate, but not romantic. When Emily arrived Saturday evening, she looked different. A dress instead of her usual scrubs or jeans, makeup carefully applied, hair down in soft waves. She looked like the Emily he'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. Hi, Thomas replied, standing to pull out her chair. They ordered wine, made small talk about Sophie's week. Then, after the waiter left with their dinner orders, Emily said, we should talk about Seattle. We should, Thomas agreed. But first, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot these past few weeks about what we're doing, how we're co-parenting, what it means, and I realized something. What? I'm not just here for Sophie. I mean, yes, she's the priority. But Emily, being around you again, seeing the woman you've become, remembering who we were together, I'm starting to wonder if I made 2 mistakes 8 years ago. Not just leaving you, but staying away. Emily set down her wine glass carefully. Thomas, what are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if people can really change, but I know I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago. I'm not my father's puppet anymore. I'm making my own choices, living my own life, and every choice I make leads me back to you and Sophie. Not out of obligation, because I want to be there. That's not enough, Emily said quietly. Wanting isn't enough. I wanted us to work 8 years ago too, but you chose your career. You chose your father's approval over us. You're right, I did, and I've spent 8 years regretting it. But Emily, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking if there's any possibility, any chance at all, that we could try again. Not for Sophie's sake, for us. Emily was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Do you know how many times I imagined this conversation? In the hospital at 3 a.m. when Sophie was a newborn, and I was so tired I could barely stand, wondering where you were. During my residency when I was juggling a toddler and 100-hour work weeks. When Sophie started asking about her father and I had to explain why he wasn't there. She looked at him with eyes full of old pain. I imagined you coming back, saying you'd made a mistake, asking for another chance, and I imagined saying no, because letting you back in would mean risking that pain again. Thomas felt hope dying in his chest, but Emily wasn't finished. But then you showed up in my office, and you turned off your phone and chose Sophie over your business deal. And you've been there every Wednesday, every weekend, every important moment. You're taking parenting classes and painting your spare bedroom purple and learning about ballet and soil science. You're showing up, Thomas, consistently. For Sophie, yes, but I'm starting to believe you'd show up for me too. I would, Thomas said fiercely. I am. Emily, I know actions matter more than words, so I'm not going to make grand promises. I'm just going to keep showing up. For Sophie, for you, for us, if you'll let there be an us. What about your career, your father's legacy? All the things that mattered more than me before? My father's dead, and his legacy is a lonely one. I don't want to end up like him, rich and successful and utterly alone. I want what we had 8 years ago, what we could have now, a real partnership, a family. I want to wake up every morning and make choices that prioritize the people I love, you and Sophie. Nothing else matters as much. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I want to believe you. God, I want to believe you. But I'm terrified, Thomas. What if you change your mind? What if work gets too demanding? What if your partners pressure you to choose and you pick them again? Then you call me on it. You hold me accountable. We build this together with communication and honesty and the understanding that we're both going to mess up sometimes. But we don't give up. We keep choosing each other. The waiter arrived with their food, breaking the intensity. They ate slowly, talking around the edges of the bigger conversation. Finally, over dessert, Emily said, about Seattle. Turn it down, Thomas said immediately. Stay in San Francisco, not because of me, but because Sophie's happy here. She has friends, a school she loves, a community. Moving her now would be disruptive, but it's such a good opportunity. So create the opportunity here. What if you could have everything Seattle's offering without leaving? What if I could help make that happen? Emily frowned. I don't want your money, Thomas. Not money, connections. I sit on the board of Pacific Medical Center. They've been trying to build their residency program. What if I talked to them about bringing you on as a senior attending physician with teaching responsibilities? You'd have the academic opportunities of Seattle without having to move. You'd do that. I'd do anything to keep you both here, to keep our family together. Emily was quiet, thinking. Then, if I stayed, if we tried this again, we'd need to go slow. I mean glacially slow. Dates, getting to know each other again. Therapy, probably. Sophie can't know we're trying until we're sure it's going to work. I won't let her get her hopes up just to have them crushed. Agreed. Completely. We do this right this time. And if it doesn't work, if we try and realize we're too broken, then we stay committed to co-parenting. We put Sophie first no matter what. But Emily, I don't think we're broken. I think we were interrupted. And now we have a chance to finish what we started. Emily reached across the table, taking his hand. Her fingers were warm, familiar. This is terrifying. I know. I'm going to have conditions, boundaries. Therapy is non-negotiable. I'll find us the best therapist in San Francisco. And you have to promise that if I tell you work is taking over again, you'll listen. Really listen. I promise. But Emily, I also need you to promise something. What? That you'll trust me, not blindly. I have to earn that. But enough to give this a real chance. I can't prove I've changed if you're waiting for me to fail. Emily nodded slowly. I can do that. But Thomas, if you hurt Sophie, if you break her heart by leaving again, there won't be a third chance. For you or for us. Understood. They talked until the restaurant closed, planning carefully. They'd tell Sophie they were spending more time together as friends first. They'd go to couples therapy. They'd have regular family time, but also adult time to rebuild their relationship. Slowly, carefully. When Thomas walked Emily to her car, the San Francisco night was clear and cold, stars visible between the buildings. On the sidewalk, Emily turned to him. I can't believe we're doing this. Second chances don't come around often, Thomas said. We'd be fools not to try. And then, because the moment demanded it, because 8 years of regret and missed opportunities hung between them, Thomas kissed her, gently, tentatively, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't pull away. She kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, and for a moment they were 27 again, standing on this same San Francisco street, believing in forever. When they broke apart, Emily whispered, "Slow, remember, we're going slow." "Right, slow." Thomas smiled. That was a slow kiss, very slow, but she was smiling too. They said good night, and Thomas drove home feeling lighter than he had in years. He had a daughter. He had a second chance with the woman he'd never stopped loving. He had a family. The next morning, Thomas woke to his phone ringing. Emily. His heart jumped. "Sophie knows," she said without preamble. "Madison's mom saw us last night at the restaurant. She mentioned it to Madison, who told Sophie that her mom and dad were on a date." "Okay. How did she react?" "She's ecstatic and asking a million questions. Can you come over? We should tell her together what's actually happening." An hour later, Thomas sat on Emily's couch with a cup of coffee, while Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor in her pajamas, looking between them expectantly. "So," Emily started, "Thomas and I did have dinner last night. And yes, it was kind of like a date. We're thinking about spending more time together, getting to know each other again. But Sophie, baby, you need to understand that this doesn't mean we're getting married tomorrow, or that we're all moving in together right away. But you might eventually," Sophie asked hopefully. "Maybe," Thomas said carefully. "We're not making any promises yet. Your mom and I need time to figure out if this is going to work. But no matter what happens between us, I'm still your dad, and I'm still going to be here for you. That part doesn't change." Sophie thought about this. "Can I tell Madison you're my boyfriend and girlfriend?" Emily laughed. "Sure, baby. You can tell Madison. And can we do family stuff? Like go to the zoo or have movie nights?" "Absolutely," Thomas said. "We can do all the family stuff you want." Sophie jumped up and hugged them both. "This is the best day ever." After Sophie ran off to call Madison with the news, Emily leaned against Thomas on the couch. "Well, no turning back now. The kids know. Guess we better make this work then," Thomas said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The following weeks unfolded like a careful dance. Thomas and Emily had dinner together twice a week, sometimes with Sophie, sometimes alone. They started couples therapy with Dr. Gomez, who'd led the parenting class. The sessions were hard, dredging up old pain and new fears, but they kept going. Thomas restructured his work life completely. He hired a COO to handle day-to-day operations, freeing him to focus on strategy and major deals. He established firm boundaries. No work calls after 6 p.m. Weekends reserved for family. Every Wednesday protected for Sophie. His partners grumbled initially, but the firm thrived. Turns out a well-balanced partner made better decisions than an overworked, half-present one. Emily met with Pacific Medical Center about a senior attending position. Thomas made introductions but stayed out of negotiations. This had to be her opportunity, not his gift. They offered her the job based on her impressive credentials. She accepted. Sophie's room at Thomas's penthouse was finished in early December. Purple walls, built-in bookshelves, a modest fish tank with 2 goldfish, Sophie named Albert and Einstein. She spent her first full weekend there just before Christmas, and Thomas learned about braiding hair at 7 a.m. and the necessity of keeping goldfish crackers in every room. For Christmas, Rebecca and her family came to visit. Sophie met her aunt, uncle, and cousins for the first time. They all squeezed into Emily's apartment for Christmas dinner, laughing and chaotic and perfect. Rebecca pulled Thomas aside at one point. "You did it," she said simply. "You built the family Dad never could. I'm so proud of you." New Year's Eve, Thomas and Emily found themselves alone after Sophie fell asleep at a friend's party. They stood on Thomas's balcony watching fireworks over the bay, wrapped in blankets against the cold. "This year," Emily said softly, "I found out my daughter had a father who wanted to know her. I started a new job. I gave my ex-boyfriend, my daughter's father, a second chance. It's been the most terrifying year of my life." "And?" Thomas asked, "and I wouldn't change any of it." She looked up at him. "You proved me wrong, Thomas. People can change. Or maybe you just finally became who you were always meant to be." "I had good motivation," Thomas said, pulling her closer. "Two very good motivations, actually. One 7-year-old, one beautiful doctor." "Smooth," Emily laughed. But when he kissed her at midnight, she kissed him back without hesitation. In March, 6 months after their reunion, Emily and Sophie moved into Thomas's penthouse. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because they were a family now for real. Sophie finally had her 2-house situation, except both houses were home. Thomas stood in the living room, now scattered with Sophie's toys despite his decorator's horror, watching Emily hang family photos on the wall. Photos from the science fair and ballet recital, photos from their first family vacation to Yosemite, photos of all of them together, laughing, messy, real. "You okay?" Emily asked, noticing his expression. "Yeah," Thomas said. "I'm just thinking about my father, about how he thought success meant sacrificing everything else. He was wrong about that. This," he gestured to their chaotic, wonderful home. "This is success. This is everything." Sophie ran through chasing one of her goldfish that she'd somehow gotten into a cup. "Thomas, Einstein escaped." "I'll help," Thomas said, laughing. "Emily, we're going to need a bigger tank. You're a millionaire. Buy a bigger tank." "Can I buy a shark?" Sophie asked hopefully. "No," Emily and Thomas said in unison. That evening, after Sophie was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Thomas and Emily sat on their balcony overlooking the city. 8 months ago, Thomas had been successful, but empty. Now he was rich in all the ways that actually mattered. "I love you," Emily said suddenly. "I don't think I've said that since we got back together, but I do. I love you, Thomas. This version of you, the father you've become, the partner you are, all of it. I love you too," Thomas said. "I never stopped. Even when I thought I had, even when I tried to convince myself I'd moved on, I never stopped loving you. And now I get to spend the rest of my life proving it. The rest of your life is a long time, not long enough." Thomas pulled a small box from his pocket. "I bought this 2 months ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. But I realized there isn't going to be a perfect moment, just real moments like this one." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. "Emily Chen, will you marry me? Not because of Sophie, not because it's what we're supposed to do, but because I want to wake up next to you every day for the rest of my life, because you make me better, because I finally understand what my father never did, that the best investment I'll ever make is in the people I love." Emily was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed as the San Francisco fog rolled in, wrapping them in its embrace. Somewhere inside, their daughter slept peacefully, dreaming 7-year-old dreams in her purple room. Tomorrow, they'd tell her the news. Tomorrow, they'd start planning a wedding. But tonight, they just held each other and marveled at the fact that sometimes, against all odds, people get second chances. And sometimes, those second chances are even better than the first. 6 months later, Thomas Berkeley married Emily Chen in a small ceremony in Golden Gate Park, near the carousel, where Sophie had first asked if he was her daddy. Sophie was their flower girl, throwing petals with enthusiastic inaccuracy. Rebecca and her family came. Emily's parents flew in from Taiwan. The gymnastics moms were there, even Martha, who'd grudgingly admitted Thomas had turned out decent after all. As they exchanged vows, Thomas looked at his bride, his partner, his daughter's mother, the woman who'd given him more chances than he deserved, and knew with absolute certainty that he'd finally gotten it right. His father had built an empire. Thomas had built something better, a home, and as Sophie grabbed both their hands after the ceremony, pulling them toward the reception with excited chatter about cake and dancing, Thomas realized that this messy, beautiful, imperfect family was the greatest success story of all. Not because it was easy, not because it followed anyone's rules, but because it was real and hard-won and worth every sacrifice. He'd found his daughter in a doctor's office 8 months ago. He'd found himself somewhere along the way, and he'd found his way back to love, to the woman who'd always been his home, even when he'd been too blind to see it. The millionaire who'd had everything discovered that he'd had nothing at all, until a 7-year-old girl with gray eyes and a gap-toothed smile taught him what really mattered, until a doctor with braids and a brilliant smile gave him the most precious gift, a second chance. And Thomas Berkeley, who'd once measured success in dollars and deals, learned to measure it in ballet recitals and homework help and bedtime stories, in quiet mornings with his wife and loud dinners with his daughter, in ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary life. He'd been stunned to discover his ex as the doctor during an exam. He'd been shocked to notice a girl who looked like him. But the real surprise, the real miracle, was discovering that it's never too late to choose love over ambition, family over fortune, presence over power. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.